How much is a human life truly worth? In the face of danger, should the value of a life diminish because of the bars that confine it? Our journey takes us back to the early 20th century, to a time when the concept of prison reform was but a whisper in the wind. The Ohio State Penitentiary, a fortress of despair, stood as a stark testament to the grim realities of incarceration. Its west cell block, a labyrinth of confinement, was crammed to the brim. Every nook and cranny echoed with the sighs of inmates, their hopes and dreams stifled by the dank, oppressive air. This overcrowded space was not just a breeding ground for despair, but also for disaster. The prison was a tinderbox, poorly ventilated and lacking in safety measures. Its cells, meant to hold 2 inmates, were bursting with up to 5, their lives stacked atop one another like a precarious house of cards. The air was thick with tension, an invisible shroud that hung heavy over the prison. But it was also thick with something else, the potential for catastrophe. The prison system at the time was harsh and unforgiving. The inmates, though stripped of their freedom, were also stripped of their basic human rights. Conditions within the prison were dire, the stench of neglect permeating every stone and steel bar. The inmates were not simply confined, they were forgotten, their pleas for humanity lost within the prison's cold, unyielding walls. Yet amidst this bleak landscape, a spark was about to ignite. A spark that would not only engulf the Ohio State Penitentiary in flames, but would also expose the harsh realities of the prison system to the world. It was a spark born out of neglect and indifference, kindled by harsh conditions and fanned by inadequate safety measures. And so, on April 21, 1930, the spark of tragedy ignited, setting ablaze the Ohio State Penitentiary. As the flames engulfed the penitentiary, the true cost of negligence and disregard for human life became horrifyingly clear. The fire, birthed in the bowels of the overcrowded and poorly ventilated west cell block, spread like a monstrous, insatiable beast. In no time, it swallowed up wing after wing, cell after cell. The prison's meager safety measures were as straws before a hurricane, utterly incapable of taming the raging inferno. In the midst of the chaos, futile attempts were made to control the blaze. Brave souls, both inmates and guards, faced the flames, armed with nothing but buckets of water and sheer desperation. But their courage was no match for the beast that roared and raged, growing hungrier with every passing second. As the fire continued its relentless march, the horrifying reality of the situation began to sink in. The prison was a death trap, its iron bars and stone walls trapping its inhabitants with the beast. Escape was a luxury that few could afford, and for many the only escape was through the cold embrace of death. The toll of the fire was devastating. The air, heavy with the scent of burning wood and the deafening crackle of the flames, was also punctuated by the cries and screams of those trapped within. The desperate pleas for help, the heart-wrenching goodbyes, the raw fury against the injustice of it all, echoed through the stone corridors, a chilling testament to the horrors unfolding within. In the aftermath, when the flames had been tamed and the smoke had cleared, the true extent of the tragedy was revealed. The charred remains of the prison stood as a grim monument to the cost of negligence and disregard for human life. In the end, the flames claimed the lives of over 300 inmates, making it one of the deadliest fires in American penal history. The Ohio State Penitentiary fire, a tragedy born from the flames of injustice, remains a somber reminder of the need for proper safety protocols and humane treatment within correctional facilities. Every disaster, every tragedy holds within it a lesson. The Ohio State Penitentiary fire was no exception. The aftermath of the Inferno was unfathomable. Over 300 lives were extinguished in a matter of hours. The public outcry was immediate and profound, the nation mourning in collective sorrow. But within this cataclysmic event, there was a spark of change, a spark that ignited a flame of reform, illuminating the darkest corners of our prison system. In the wake of the disaster, the harsh conditions within the Ohio State Penitentiary were thrust into the spotlight. The prison was overcrowded, poorly ventilated, and severely lacking in adequate safety measures. The fire had spread rapidly, consuming the west cell block and its inhabitants in a ruthless blaze. The public was horrified. They demanded change, and they demanded it swiftly. And so, the gears of reform began to turn. Fire safety regulations were revisited with a newfound urgency. The tragedy had laid bare the inadequacies of the existing measures, and it was clear that significant changes were needed. new protocols were implemented, focusing on preventing such a disaster from ever happening again. Fire drills became mandatory, fire safety equipment was upgraded, and cell block designs were revised to allow for better ventilation and easier evacuation. But the reforms didn't stop there. The fire had also highlighted the urgent need for improvements in inmate housing. The prison had been bursting at the seams, its inmates crammed into cramped and inhospitable conditions. The public demanded an end to such inhumane treatment. As a result, steps were taken to reduce overcrowding, improve living conditions, and ensure that every inmate was treated with dignity and respect. The Ohio State Penitentiary fire served as a harsh wake-up call. It exposed the grim reality of our prison system and sparked a wave of much-needed reform. It was a tragic event, yes, but it was also a catalyst for change. A catalyst that continues to shape our prison system today. The ashes of the Ohio State Penitentiary fire gave rise to a new era of prison safety and reform. The Ohio State Penitentiary, a monument of its time, was constructed with a foreboding sense of authority. As historical images illustrate, its stone walls, tall and imposing, and the ominous whipping posts standing outside, bore witness to the harsh realities of correctional penalties of that era. Yet the history of this penitentiary reveals an event so dark, its echoes are still felt today. The fire that engulfed the Ohio State Penitentiary remains a sobering echo from our past. It was a brutal mark on our shared history, a poignant reminder of the worth of every human life, irrespective of their circumstances. When confronted with such disaster, we must never forget. Even a life imprisoned is a life worth safeguarding.